Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we are looking at week 5 play props here in the NFL as we roll along. 4 weeks seems like a good amount of time to finally have some legitimate data, sample sizes as we move forward with these picks. Definitely want to make sure to like that the video. Go ahead and subscribe to the page. We're bringing you these videos each and every week, as well as a ton of other great NFL content that is on the Lines YouTube page. So make sure that you are checking that stuff out. Turn those notifications on. Nate, let's go ahead and have a slightly better week. I went 0 for reverse sweep for the kid. I am picking it up here and ready to go, but I will follow your lead here as you maintain your positive units stance.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I did talk you off Kyren Williams, and I went the other way on that, and I was wrong because the Bears apparently are horribly coached and don't know how to play defense.
Oh, they are.
But still won the game. But moving on here after a 2-2 week for myself, I'm going Amari Cooper for the first pick, and don't mind Jerry Jeudy either. I think Deshaun Watson is in a good get-right spot here against Washington, both because of game state and because of the matchup. Look, if Washington's a sell high at minus 3.5 right now in terms of point spreads, then Cleveland should have some success in a win here. They still don't have a running game. Like Nick Chubb, I believe, is not going to be cleared. Jerome Ford is just not very good. And I think 3 of their linemen are either going to be out or hobbled again. So it's going to fall on Deshaun, who, I think posted another Jordan quote trying to get his swagger back. And he did for a little bit. Like there were a couple plays there in that Raiders game where it's like, that's the Deshaun Watson of old. And particularly the 70-yard bomb to Amari Cooper that would have won the game probably if not for a holding call, right? I mean, so that's a huge amount of lost air yards, unrealized air yards, as they say, for Amari Cooper, who leads the NFL in that stat now. He is getting a ton of air yards, 73 per game at least. 227 in his last 2 in terms of air yards and 20 targets. So, I mean, that's exactly the type of volume you want to see. He's number 1 among receivers in routes run because Cleveland, again, has no real running game to threaten anybody. And look, if Washington's not a sell high and Jaden Williams continues to shred everybody, then that's a perfect game state, right? To come right back against a bad secondary. I don't care that they shut down Kyler Murray last week. I think that has a lot more to do with Cliff Kingsbury knowing everything about Kyler Murray, right? And just being like, all right, here's how we're going to play him. And then great game plan. And Cooper should be running more routes on Ben St-Juste than Jeudy based on where they line up. I would much rather attack him than a rookie, Mike Samerstill, who's athletic and very twitchy and I think can actually hang maybe with Jeudy. But look, St-Juste is definitely below average. He's 83rd this year in yards per game so far. He was 99th last year. He's definitely a guy you can attack. And Cooper's is just a pro's pro. I think he's going to continue to get open for Watson, even though he's in trade rumors at this point, Amari Cooper. But this could be the week that Deshaun Watson finally looks like a functioning starting quarterback based on the signs we saw last week.
Could be. Definitely could be. I think you're still in a better spot to go to his favorite target, like you said. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy that just gets peppered with targets. If it's going to get any better, then the yardage, we're not going to get this at a certain point in time. If they actually start making a legit connection, this should probably be closer to like 65 to 70 and a half, as the line for his receiving yards. If he was catching however many of those unrealized air yards or penalties that were called back to your point, or Deshaun Watson bad throw percentage, all that stuff. So if Deshaun Watson can be competent, Amari Cooper has proven he still has it, and fully agree with all that. So I'm going to go and start off with not the sexiest name, but a wide receiver as well, Allen Lazard. And look, this is a situation where I'm taking Lazard over 34.5 receiving yards because of the context. It's wild that Minnesota's defense is number 1 in dropback EPA and still second most pass yards in the league, might even be most now at this point, actually, that they've given up in the league. Just want to make sure I'm not messing that up. Yeah, there are other 2. Yeah, because Tampa Bay. So other than the Thursday night game, right, with a team that played one more, they are dead last. So that's the only reason it was confusing me. So it's very interesting that that's the case. They do stop the run, though, so well. And to the point that you've made, have gotten out to leads in a way that has really led them to force the other team to pass. I think both those things are going to be the case for the Jets, whose offensive line has gotten very poor push forward, and that will not be able to really do much with that run game. I don't have the cojones to sit Breece Hall on my fantasy team this week, that there might be better options if you have anybody that you consider like a top 5 or 6 guy. I think you might have to sit Breece at that point, other than possibly the receptions. But the receiving yards go to wide receivers against the Vikings. It really doesn't go to the running back, and that's because of how much zone that they play. Right at this point, already through 4 games, playing the second most zone in the league, and that's pretty good for limiting running back stuff, as you have all your eyes on the quarterback, and those short passes you can cut off pretty quickly. So even the receiving yards for Breece scares me, but they're going to be forced to throw short, and that's where Allen Lazard comes into play. You're talking about the slot guy against the zone. And that's going to be where he runs all of his routes, looking at a really nice contested catch rate from that spot. So he's not getting the most separation, although he's much better against zone than he is man in terms of creating separation and winning those routes. But at the same time, he's catching a lot of tough balls, which is what he does. I think he's always going to be liable for a sprinkle on a touchdown. He's the most targeted guy in the red zone for A-Rod as well. And as we continue to see close to 3-1 for him to get a touchdown, that's at least a look. But the 34.5 receiving yards when he's running that much from the slot, and the Vikings are allowing the second most receptions and the most yards to wide receivers on the season. The strength of their defense is obviously up front in the front 7, and obviously getting pressure on the quarterback as well, which is another reason that I like Lazard. I think the pressure will be there against A-Rod, and he'll look to get that ball out pretty quickly, and he doesn't feel more comfortable than he does with Lazard. Like with Garrett Wilson, it's clearly not there. Such a low ADOT for Wilson is a big reason for that, and Allen Lazard has been a much better short yardage target for A-Rod this season.
Yeah, I agree with that part of it for sure. I think, the cat and mouse game with Brian Flores coming after Rodgers, he's going to be hitting these kind of high percentage throws, a hot read, whatever, quick targets. So maybe Breece Hall gets going off that. Maybe Tyler Conklin. It's not going to be sexy. Like this Jets offense is in no way explosive. I think they would prefer to pound the rock and run the ball and keep this low scoring if they don't get into a huge hole like everybody else has against Minnesota. But I'm not really willing to trust them. It's Vikings or pass for me in terms of betting perspective, because this is a massive coaching mismatch. We're talking about Robert Saleh, who just stands there looking dumbfounded, and Nathaniel Hackett, who only has a job because Aaron Rodgers wants him to, against the coach of the year front runner by a mile and the best defensive coordinator who should be a head coach somewhere, with some pretty good personnel apparently. Like, I don't want to get in front of that train, but it's a London game. Anything can happen. Jets should get right a little bit after playing in the rain at home. But speaking of terrible coaches, the Panthers at the Bears this week, and apparently the Bears are not going to divest any more resources towards stopping the run. So I think Chuba Hubbard goes over 59.5 rushing yards again. I mean, he's gone way over this in 2 Andy Dalton starts, despite the negative game script last week against the Bengals, right? I mean, they couldn't stop the Bengals at all. Joe Burrow shredding dudes, but Chuba still goes 100 plus. He's now averaging 109 in the 2 with Dalton, 48 touches per game, including 9 red zone touches. And really back to week 2 when Bryce Young was still out there, is averaging 5.7 yards per carry. And like, he's just a workhorse back in an offense that is actually pretty competent now. Deontay Johnson's a little banged up, so that could be even more run heavy. And as we know, like, the Bears are not a team you want to throw on that much. They've got really talented corners, but despite that, the coaching staff cannot figure out how to rekindle their good run defense from last year. And I think a lot of this play has to do with the other side of the ball too, because like I said, Joe Burrow was shredding him. Like, I would be really worried about the Chuba over, which I kind of gave out as a lean last week because of that. But Caleb Williams, I do not respect enough to shred this Carolina defense, even though they're not particularly good. Like, he doesn't really know what's going on. He dives away from pressure and spins in circles all the time. He was extremely lucky to get anything done against the Rams defense that's 31st in DVOA. And like, they're not even possessing the ball at home, are the Bears. They're 22% on third downs, which is 3rd worst in the NFL. So I think the Panthers will have plenty of possession, and that just means giving Chuba the rock.
Yeah, I really like the Chuba bet. That was a lean that I had, and saw that you were playing that and in full agreement. It's running. You have to run against the Bears first of all. I mean, their run defense isn't bad by any means, but it pales in comparison to their pass defense, which was what we know. The Rams tried to run the entirety of the game last week, regardless of being down the entirety of the game last week. So I think that speaks to how the lack of fear that teams have against Caleb Williams right now. We don't have to run just because we didn't score in the last 3 drives. Doesn't mean we need to start passing. We might have gone 3 and out on 3 of those drives and to add 2 or 3 rush plays per drive. We're still going to do it against the Bears. It's a better play. We're not worried about Caleb Williams. Almost the inverse of Thursday Night Football, where I think Kirk Cousins and company would have been more likely to try to run if they didn't see Baker Mayfield just piling up touchdowns in the first half and continuing to be like, we're just having so much more success with the pass at this point. We'll keep it going. And I could definitely see that being the inverse here, right? Where it's like, you don't have to do that because Caleb Williams ain't putting up a ton of points on the other side. You can keep the pace of play slow as you want. And I think they'll do that. I do think Andy Dalton is a good under on the passing yards. My fear would be that there's touchdowns coming on the either touchdowns coming via like defense and weird stuff from the Bears, to be honest, which led me to go, maybe because Andy Dalton might be throwing picks finally. He's only thrown 1 in his first 2, but I'm taking over a half interception for him for -130. And I would play that to like -150, to be honest. This is a situation where I think he's going to continue. He's going to have to throw at least a bit. I do think Chuba will have some success, to your point, but I don't think that's going to end in points for them as this Bears defense continues to lock up as soon as you get near them. He's just throwing the ball so much, and it's the red rifle. And when is this going to stop? Now, the Bengals and the Raiders are not the Bears. Like, let's make that very, 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 very clear. At this point, like, they're 4th in interceptions with 5 of them through these games. They only have 1 game that they didn't turn somebody over. That was, I believe, CJ Stroud was the only one to avoid throwing a pick against them. And that's one of the more accurate rookies that we've seen in the league since last year. Does not turn the ball over. It's a big reason for Houston's success. The drop back EPA for the Bears is going to be second best in the league. I think it's probably better than Minnesota's, but it's at least second best in the league right now. And this is going to be a much different situation. You're going to see a ton more like tight coverage on the outside on guys like Deontay Johnson without Adam Thielen. Once again, there's not as much down the middle for him. Not really trusting the rook yet in Leggett. He's looked a lot better with Andy Dalton than Bryce Young, but that's just going from unavailable because Bryce Young's your quarterback to 4 and 45 kind of guy at this point, which doesn't really scare me for Dalton getting the yards or for the separation that his guys are going to be able to get, as Chicago's defense is limiting separation to the second best in the league with their disgusting defensive backfield there. That's just filthy. So the other thing I looked up real quick was when the red rifle does throw 30 times, which he's thrown 37 and 40 times now in his games so far this season. When he throws 30 plus, which would be the expectation, once again, 60% of those games he comes away with an INT. And obviously that's a lot of data from like a year or two, at least 2 years ago at this point, and a little bit last year. But I still think it's pretty Andy Dalton going to be Andy Dalton as soon as you give him enough time. This is his 3rd game playing.
Yeah, I mean, point well taken with the step up in competition after facing the last 2 teams that he did, looking as sharp as he did. Maybe I'm blinded because I really want Panthers here to cover. I want them to win outright. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Xavier Leggett, and there's no props up yet because Deontay is a little bit questionable. But yeah, I would definitely attack his overs the way I saw the Bears playing pass defense last week. I mean, the Rams were just running simple dig routes, and it was wide open every time. So the guy who's going to be working in the middle of the field, even if he's a rookie, I'll take that. I don't expect Matt Eberflus to adjust because, again, he's just not very good. Moving on to my last pick, T. Higgins. You're getting plus money on over 4.5 receptions. Plus 116 is juicy enough to take it, and over 51.5 reception yards. I would put a unit on both of those. I'm going back to attacking the Baltimore pass defense, which, yes, did not work out last week for Josh Allen and company, but it is still the likely game script against the number 1 run defense in the league, a Bengals team that doesn't really run the ball, and then an offense on the other side in Baltimore that's number 1 in yards per play and pace and just, who's going to ramp it up. Probably going to be high scoring. I mean, the Bengals defense is so bad, right? Derrick Henry projected 90 yards or so on the run line. Like, it should be a high scoring environment. And look, the difference is Josh Allen has no receivers. I mean, especially when Khalil Shakir goes down early in that game, they just had nobody capable of creating separation. Burrow has studs, and it's a division game. It's Joe Burrow. Like, I know he hasn't had success in the last few against the Ravens, but like, I'm not going to doubt this dude. Like, there's no way I think the Bengals aren't going to have success. He pretty much went out there and was like, look, I got to be near perfect. And he's the kind of guy who's going to back that up. Right. So targeting his top guys. And I've seen a little bit in the last couple division games for the Bengals that Jamar Chase draws extra attention, and then T. Higgins can go off. Right. Week 2 last year against the Ravens, 8 of 12 targets for T. And then down the stretch against Pitt, 5 catches, 140 for T. Higgins. He's starting to, probably this could be like a takeoff week after he got 2 games under his belt after missing, camp with some holdout things and then a hamstring injury, missing the first 2. He did dip in snaps last week. I don't know if that's because they were in control, but like I said, like the situation of how to attack the Ravens is you're going to be passing the ball like all day, and he might get more of rookie Nate Wiggins versus Brandon Stevens or Marlon Humphrey, and we don't know necessarily how they're going to play it, with Jamar Chase on the other side, but like. I think he's getting a lot of short yardage looks so far this season. So I do like the receptions here at plus money. And I think he finds a way to get 50 plus yards.
Yeah. No, I have zero qualms with that bet. I think he's trending in the right direction. The targets are continuing to go up for him as he gets healthier and on the same page as the team that he was holding out for at one point. So T. Higgins has his stock rising. This is a pretty good situation, and Baltimore, as good as it's been overall on defense, to your point, we thought Josh Allen was going to really expose that last week, and it got ugly. But to your point, there's a lot more talent right now at the skill positions for the Bengals, which is weird to say, a team that's 1-3, than the Bills, who have at times looked like a potential Super Bowl contender, versus other times where they look very much not like it. But we'll figure things out, I'm sure, in this NFL as we move forward. I'll close it out with a wide receiver versus the New York, not as bad as we thought, Giants, because Malik Neighbors is really good, but not playing. So not much to like about the Giants. He's too important. But I do think Jaxon Smith-Njigba on the other side with a banged up Tyler Lockett is a pretty good look. Plus, we're talking about another thing that I was targeting with Alan Lazard, which is slot receivers who find themselves open in zone coverage. And the Giants run the 4th most zone in the league, and JSN is running 75% of his routes from the slot. With a 100% route participation as well. So regardless of there being 3 receivers on the Seahawks, he's been getting plenty of routes. He's been a target monster, and it's been a bit boomer bust with him at times. But once again, with Tyler Lockett probably not looking like he might not play. I think he's still listed as questionable, but there is the likelihood that he doesn't play. He looked pretty banged up last week as well. So I either way, the targets should be going towards him. And Geno, even with Kenneth Skywalker coming in, having such an awesome game last week, highlight worthy game, and still really couldn't pull it out. What did Geno have? 58 pass attempts and well over 30 completions, had all of the yards. And that's Seattle's game plan, regardless of, like I said, having Kenneth, I keep calling him Skywalker. I'm just going to keep going with it. Kenneth Skywalker out there. They still prefer that. Their pass blocking also has been way better than their run blocking. And that's a part of the reason I think you see Zach Charbonnet a lot more effective in the pass game than you've seen him when he was the running back, the lead back in the run game. But the way that this Giants D-line also pressures, I'm looking more at short yardage guys. DK has gone over 103 straight games. Honestly, think he's probably fine too at 65.5. I could see this team building a pretty big lead by both these dudes getting a ton of receptions in the first half as well. Just kind of trying to put this Giants team away. But I think at the end of the day, with the short yardage, short guy against a high blitz team who only has good players on their defense, on the defensive line, really at this point, and a blitzer like Brian Burns, there's not going to be as much time for Geno, but at the same time, I think those 8 to 10 yard routes, which is exactly where Njigba lives, are going to be pretty open. He'll stay in the slot even with Tyler Lockett if he doesn't play.
Yeah, he could go to the moon this week, especially if Lockett doesn't play and if the Giants hang around a little bit, because yeah, Seattle's just, I think, number 2 in pass rate above expectation right now. Pete Carroll out of there, new blood in. They're like, let's let Geno cook. And he's got 3 great receivers, including this kid who's due for a touchdown too, probably at some point. But I have no problem with the matchup here, and expect the Seahawks to be throwing even if they do, get up 20 points at some point in this game.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, 100%. Just put it away. That is all the time, though, that we have for you in Week 5. Play at Props. Continue to follow along. Subscribe to that page. Go ahead and give us a like if you're getting stuff out of this video as well. And until we see you next, happy betting.